So maybe this was something that was inevitable, that Marisol knew was going to happen, and that this was the only way to bring her daughters together. Hey guys, it's Kristen, and today we are talking about episode 16 of the Charmed reboot. Now, going into this episode, I think we all were really excited because we learned so much last week about what really happened to Marisol, how she died, and now we just need to know why. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you like my videos, and please drop down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on this week's episode because we got a lot of answers and I think that's something we've all been waiting for. Let's talk about it. But this episode ends up backtracking a tiny bit because we have Charity who erases Macy's memory so that she doesn't know what happened, and we have Macy trying to piece everything together and her sisters trying to figure out what's going on so that they can help her. It's kind of a race against the clock in this episode because Macy's trying to figure out why she can't remember things. She's afraid she's, kind of demoning out and not remembering and hurting people. And at the same time, we have Charity who's trying to convince her that the best solution is to bind her powers and essentially stop the power of 3. I have to say though, there was a moment where I was like, can't Maggie just use her powers and help kind of bring Macy's memory forward? But they didn't end up doing that. They had Macy figure it out on her own. And once she remembers that Charity is the one who killed their mom, then we kind of get into this big power struggle between the girls and Charity. Charity has been using that vortex below the house to supercharge her powers, but 2 can play at that game, so the sisters do the same and they are able to kind of strip her of her powers and get her banished to Tartarus. And the things that I think were really interesting that came up in this episode were the fact that, yes, obviously Charity has been lying to the girls. She not only killed their mom, but she killed the other elders who started to figure out what she had done. I was really happy to see that Harry was not involved in any way and that he was innocent. And we actually finally get to see the full scene of what went on in that situation and why Charity killed Marisol, because that's something that I think is the big question. It's like, yes, we know she killed her, but was there a reason? Was she being possessed? Is she really a demon? Is she evil? What was going on there? I think what's interesting is that Charity was doing all these things kind of out of desperation, out of fear, out of trying to do what she thought was best for the greater good. So we get to see the flashback scene to Marisol unbinding the girls' powers, bringing the power of 3 together, and Charity comes in and is like, what are you doing? Marisol's like, I had a 3rd child, she died, we brought her back with a necromancer, and my daughters are the charmed ones. I have premonitions, I saw the future, I know what's gonna happen. And Charity's like, well, that's really dangerous. Your daughter was brought back with a necromancer, she's probably really evil. And Marisol's like, no, she's not. I know that she's not. Everything's gonna be fine. But Charity doesn't believe it. And Charity thinks that having charmed ones, that one of them has this possible darkness in her, is going to be too dangerous for the world. And so she's trying to stop Marisol from, unbinding their powers and bringing the sisters together, and she throws her out the window and kills her. I think that Charity should have trusted Marisol in that moment, especially since she does have the power of premonition and she knows what's going on. Yes, futures can change and stuff, but I don't think it was necessary to throw her out the window, and you could tell that Charity was really kind of affected by what she did, and I think it did unhinge her a little bit because she hurt this person that was one of her close friends, and then when the other elders started figuring out what was going on, she got rid of them too because she didn't want to be found out. And it became this sort of desperation type of thing where, at first she was doing it for what she thought was the greater good, and then it became more of a self-preservation. That's what the main story is about this episode, but we do get 2 kind of smaller side stories, which was that Fiona revealed that she is alive to Charity and Harry, and they are shook. They definitely did not know that, and you could definitely see that there is a sibling rivalry between Fiona and Charity. And I think maybe Charity was always that kind of stereotypical older sister who was the good, responsible one, and they kind of maybe made Fiona feel like she was not as, powerful or not on the same level as her sister, when now it turns out that Fiona has all of this power, she's immortal, and Charity's the one who, maybe is not as good as she would like herself to think. Fiona says something about how, oh, this is so typical of Charity to make every moment about herself, and that she still thinks that she's the good one, when really that vortex in the basement is for Fiona and it will fill her up with power. So something's gonna go on there where Fiona is either gonna have to join the Charmed Ones or be against them in some way to use that vortex. I guess we'll find out soon enough what that's gonna kind of mean and what her filling up with that power is going to mean for the world. We don't really know too much about Fiona, and like I've said in other videos, there's this interesting gray area around magic in this show where you don't really know who's good or bad, and I think we've seen that in the Medusa episode. I think we've seen that within Charity and the Elders and the Sarkana. There's just a lot of gray area in regards to good versus evil in this magical world. And then there's this other story with Parker where his dad, Alistair, enlists Lucy to kind of poison him with this demonic sickness that will essentially make it so that he needs to call on his dad and kind of be on his side and get help from him, even though he's trying to get rid of his demonic side with his mom. And I wonder if at any point it's going to come out to Parker and Maggie that Lucy's the one that's been kind of either hypnotized or something to be involved in this, and she's the one kind of doing Alistair's bidding. Now that Parker's really sick, there's a lot of options of what could go on. You know, maybe the Charmed Ones can save him, maybe this is how he becomes the source of all evil because that'll be the only way to stop him from dying. And then we also get to see Charity and Alistair Kane team up, so that's going to be really interesting, especially since now Charity doesn't have powers anymore, but she does know the ins and outs of, you know, this witch world and the Elders and the Charmed Ones. Alistair returns and essentially breaks her out of Tartarus before they put her in there, and it's funny that he was able to save her, but we never found out what happened to Hunter. Did he ever save Hunter from Tartarus? I don't know. So now Charity and Alistair are going to be a team and they're going to be working together. So I'm curious to see what their kind of team up is going to mean for everything. I thought this was a pretty solid episode. I think that I liked the pacing. Again, I think that now that we've finally gotten into like this later half of the season, they've really figured out how to pace the show so that it doesn't feel so rushed. Like, I like that we're focusing on like one main story and then there's like a couple of other things going on, but it doesn't feel like there's so much going on and it's like overwhelming. I'm so happy that we finally know what happened to Marisol, why, and it just kind of stinks because honestly it's something that I think could have been avoided. Although what would have happened if Macy had shown up at the house and Marisol would have been there? She would have died, right? Because they're never allowed to look at each other ever again based off of the deal that Marisol had made. So maybe this was something that was inevitable, that Marisol knew was going to happen, and that this was the only way to bring her daughters together. And I think in terms of the powers in this episode, they definitely went like full force with it, and some of the powers I'm like, well, how does Charity have the ability to do this and this and this and this? This is not something we've seen before, but I'm chalking it up to her using those runes in a secret room in the basement to supercharge her powers. Maybe she's been doing that in addition to spying on the girls and not telling them the truth, and you know, it's crazy that she's able to do that, but when you think about it, the Charmed Ones are really new to this still. They're very new to this magical world, so really Charity as an elder could have said anything to them and they would believe her because they don't know. But I guess it is good that Mel is the kind of person that's suspicious of a lot of people, so it ended up working out in their favor. And then for next week's episode, it looks like we are going to see Harry go against a council who might, you know, strip him of his white lighterness because he, you know, had an affair with Charity and because he put the lives of the Charmed Ones in danger. So this might be the episode where we get to see that new white lighter come in, played by Chloe Bridges, which I think would be really fun. Based off what I had heard about like the episode where a new white lighter comes in, it's like only a one episode type of deal. So we will still have Harry around taking care of the girls, and I think you can clearly see that he is doing his job and that he is dedicated to protecting them. And I think especially after this episode we can see that Harry is definitely someone that the girls can trust. If you like this video, make sure to check out my other Charmed reviews over here and drop down in the comments to continue the conversation. I cannot wait to talk about this episode of Charmed with you guys. See ya!